Thrilled to have Nelson Abreu with us today. I've been following Nelson's work for many years, and I follow Nelson. I don't know if you know this, but I follow all of your posts on Facebook, which are absolutely amazing. Every day, Nelson has the most incredible eclectic collection of links and posts, and just covers such a wide field. Nelson is an electrical engineer who specializes in renewable energy, which is a fabulous field to be in at the moment. He grew up in Portugal, but he's lived and worked in LA since 2003. He began experiencing and studying transformative, multidimensional consciousness phenomena, for you and me, out-of-body experiences, in 1998. He has developed original workshops and taught about out-of-body experiences, subtle energy, mindfulness, lucid dreaming, intuition, and personal development at the International Academy for Consciousness since 2003. As well as that, he has founded his own organization and has developed various apps which facilitate altered states and profound relaxation. Nelson, welcome. Lovely to have you with us. I've been looking forward to this for such a long time.
So nice to be with you. I had a pleasure to record a very stimulating conversation with Victor. I met some time ago, and been following your work since then. And very nice to be here with you. I've had a lifelong interest in transformative experiences like out-of-body experience, and I'm also an engineer by profession, which also has to do with problem solving and challenging convention and transformation in a technological way, in an applied way. And basically everything that ties together my interests has to do with curiosity about the world and trying to improve things, improve myself, improve the condition for people on Earth. That's actually what engineering is about, and it's also what consciousness science is about, but obviously in a different realm, in a different way. But sharing these attributes, right? In a very real sense, what interests me the most nowadays about out-of-body experience and related phenomena is the fact that these experiences can create a cognitive shift in people, such that they live their life now from a different point of view. Like the mind once expanded cannot come back to its original shape, right? That sort of idea. I'm sure you've all heard of the overview effect. There's a short 20-minute documentary you can find on Vimeo. There's also a Netflix documentary called One Strange Rock, where astronauts talk about this experience they call the overview effect, where once they see the Earth from outer space, they are changed forever. And they no longer see themselves as Portuguese, Australian, South African, or whatnot. They see themselves as humans on Earth. Planet is their home. Their identity is planetary. Now, take that concept and now expand it to a cosmic perspective. That's how I felt when I had my first out-of-body experience. When I had my first out-of-body experience, I was able to identify myself as a consciousness. I was able to identify myself as a being with capital B, right? That was beyond being a male, or being Portuguese, Indian, American, whatever I am. I have a mixture of things now. Being more than just a human body, really, and being a being of the cosmos. So it's like an overview effect on steroids, right? So not only can you see yourself out of the earth and look back and realize we are all part of this organism that's very sensitive and fragile, and we have to take care of it, and we're all an extension of it, and it is an extension of us. Now we can understand ourselves and as an extension of each other, of a source of consciousness, right? That goes even beyond the earth and even beyond the physical dimension. So how can you come back from that, and especially if you have a number of these experiences, and be the same? It's very difficult to be the same. And so what that leads to is re-examining everything, right? It's a disruption, really, of your perspective, of your paradigm. So there is this paradigm shift that will then manifest at all levels of life. So to me, it's akin to going to the root level of being and then seeing how it kind of spreads out. So take a topic like economics, right? Maybe it seems really far removed from spirituality, from OBEs, right? This otherworldly thing. However, if you look at the interest rates and the GDP, these seem like really hard numbers, and they seem like something very objective. But actually, as we all know, money is not something studied in physics for a reason. It's not part of the natural world. It's not like a given in the world, in physics. It's our creation, right? So actually, it is a system that allows us to create a sort of like store of value. And value is very much a thing of the realm of consciousness. We assign value to something, and then we might exchange that value for another thing, and so on. So a tree, for example, might be just seen for its wood, or it might be seen as a source of oxygen, as something that captures carbon dioxide that actually sustains life on Earth. So it can be something almost worthless or something extremely expensive, depending on how you look at it, depending on your values, right? So if you look deeper and deeper, and this is something the former minister of finances from Portugal, I saw him on TV many years ago. He was talking about how this first layer of economics has another layer, which is flows of information, where people used to make decisions about which stocks to buy, which products to buy, and so on. And underneath that, there are influences of power dynamics. And under that, there are values, there are attitudes, there are principles. And underneath all of that, there is the world of energy, of consciousness, of being. So even some economists will acknowledge that underneath it all, even though there's this perception of hard numbers, we're really talking about the soft stuff. We're talking about the subjective things, which is ultimately consciousness or being. So my point is that when you have these profound experiences that shift the way you think about yourself and your place in the world, nothing is unaffected. So the way you think about how a person should conduct an organization is affected, a government, a whole economic system, everything can be re-examined. The way we should treat and interact with nature can be re-examined, and so on. So I started out studying these experiences just because I'm very curious. I wanted to know what it's like, and I didn't want to just read about them. And once I read that you could have your own experiences, that was very exciting to me. And once I had the first experience, then it became more than just a curiosity. It was really an understanding of how profound it can be to an individual. And then I didn't run the streets screaming Eureka, but almost, right? But I found out quickly that, not everybody's interested in this stuff because they think it's weird, they think it's scary, they think, it's just religion, or there's many reasons they might think it's not interesting for them. Doesn't give them money, so what's the point? Because money is the point of life, right? So they think. So it just seems either irrelevant or interesting, but I got things to do. And it's this very small group of people who think, oh, this is very valuable, right? So for 20 years, I spent time with those people like us, like you, who value this realm of knowledge, of experience, and that there is a lot of potential here as far as personal growth, as far as social development, and that's great, you know. And it's been a wonderful journey. But more recently, I've tried to expand that to while I continue to study the nuts and bolts of OBEs, energy, telepathy, and all of that, in an academic sense, in a practical, experiential sense, in training people. I do most of that work through IAC. This is a nonprofit created more than 20 years ago, led by uh, people that came from Europe, from Brazil, different countries, US, who came together with this perspective, right? That you can study these experiences, you can develop your abilities, and you can pursue this knowledge with a balance between respecting intuition and psychic abilities, but at the same time valuing logic, reason, questioning attitude, and not creating a sort of a religion around the experiences, but really a science around the experiences. So IAC focuses on that, on teaching these experiences to people all over the world, in person, online, and it's mostly volunteer driven, and they've been doing it, like I said, for quite some time. And they have a wonderful campus in Portugal, where they've created a serene, beautiful environment for people to go even deeper. So you can learn more about IAC and iacworld.org, and finding ways in which you can get involved if you wish to. So I've volunteered with IAC now for about 20 years, and been teaching courses, workshops with them since 2003. And I pursue other work, which is more applied wise. I did start an organization with some with some colleagues, IACT. I've just transitioned out of IACT. Now I'm a partner with IACT, but I've started something new called Numascape, where it's really focused on, whereas IACT is focused on applying consciousness towards people's everyday issues. So they have mentors who use energy, OBEs, and other techniques to kind of act as mentors, as someone you can bounce ideas with, more like a coach, right? And they apply it. They work with artists. They work with creatives. They work with just about everyday people to give them the tools and the courage to apply all of this in a very practical way in their everyday life. So it's not just a concept or just a nice experience. Now it's something that you are using to advance your maturity, to become more altruistic, more fulfilled. So that's the work that ACT is doing right now. And myself, I'm working with Numascape. Numascape is a design studio, actually. So we design spaces, technology, so actual physical things, right? Spaces, experiences, but embedded with a sense that technology, spaces that we inhabit, they should promote our well-being. They should facilitate all these experiences, actually, and our fulfillment, right? They should be at the service of our well-being. And I'm really interested in the intersection of these three things: design, consciousness, and technology. I know they sound a little bit disparate, but I'll give you an example. I worked with a friend on a type of technology that uses sound and mechanical waves, vibration, to course vibrations from your head to your feet, and from your feet to your head, and kind of guides your attention from your feet to your head and throughout your whole body. And let's say you're lying down like this, and you feel like something coursing through your body, up and down your body. And then it gets faster and faster and more intense. And before you know it, energy is moving like very fast, back and forth, until you feel like your whole body is vibrating and resonating and entering what's called the vibrational state, which kind of can propel you into an out-of-body experience. Well, where did I get that idea from? Well, from colleagues at IAC, IACT, right? Wagner, Allegretti, Nancy Trivolato, and other of my colleagues who for many years have been studying these energy techniques, chi techniques, that can actually facilitate the out-of-body experience, right? So they turned me on to that when I was a student at IAC. Then I went on to teach other people through IAC these techniques. But then I got to thinking, you know, it's a relatively simple concept, but it has some nuances, and sometimes people struggle practicing the energy techniques. You know, oh, I don't quite feel the energy, so how do I move it, and so on. So I thought about the fact that our attention goes where our energy goes, where our attention goes. So how can I direct someone's attention in a way that mimics this energy exercise? So using vibrations that travel throughout your body as you lie down on this surface, then I can, in a sense, guide you to do this technique without you even knowing much about it, right? Without me being present, without uttering a single word. And I've tried it on friends who have no training in this area, like coworkers, like a fellow engineer. You know, after a long day of work, I say, come and lie down on this thing and just see what happens. And really, after 20 minutes, he got up and told me, I felt like my body was detaching from itself, that I was floating out, and I kind of sat up and then came back down to the body. This is amazing for me. After 20 years of trying to teach people to have OBEs, and it can be, a process. I took 5 months to have my first OBE, right? And trying every night. And this gentleman just lie down for 20 minutes. He doesn't know anything about meditation, yoga, OBEs, nothing. And he had an experience. Of course, he's open-minded and he's not just anybody, but still, I was very excited with that. I took this platform to a conference that IAC put together in Portugal. There were lots of people there, Tom Campbell, Wagner Allegretti. There were people like even somewhat skeptical individuals like Olaf Blank, the neuroscientist from Switzerland, who studies OBEs from a neurological point of view. There was Brenda Dunn from the Princeton Engineering and Almost Research Lab. I got them all to try it, and some of them were more open about the experience than others. But essentially, out of the 300, 200 people that were there, I think at least 100 of them tried it for just 5-10 minutes because there wasn't much time. And many of them had some of these partial OBEs, right? They felt like it was helpful. So that gave me a lot of encouragement. Now, my wife, Minori Sumanasinga, she's an architect, a designer. So she's helping me take this effective but frankly ugly platform that I engineered and making it into something like a beautiful piece of furniture that will be embedded with this tech and some more. And we're revising the technology to be even better. But you get the idea. Something that combines like appealing design, effective technology that is guided by techniques that have evolved over millennia, right? Because we're not inventing anything, we're just advancing what our ancestors already have been doing, and presenting technology. But also what's different about what I'm trying to do is the narrative or the pitch. If I talk to you, I can be more upfront about the type of experiences I've had, what they mean to me, the more advanced things, let's say. But when I talk about these things at work, for example, I work in a major utility, it's not really necessarily the place to talk about spirit guides or whatnot. Right? I mean, it could be, but it really isn't. Not in the States, at least. So, but guess what? Maybe, I don't know if you made this connection, but I work with, sometimes I'm surrounded by thousands of volts, 500,000, 230,000 volts. Like your outlet, right? It's probably 50 or 60 hertz, depending where you are in the world. So it's really massive amounts of energy, right? If I make a mistake, I could become extra physical and a one-way OBE, right? So I have to really pay attention, be conscious in a very practical way, or I'm toast. right? So I really got to see how mindful. When you say mindfulness, it's not just uh, pay attention to your breath. It can be pay attention to what you're doing, so you don't make a mistake and put the whole city in the dark or kill yourself, right? So I started to see that there is a connection between mindfulness and safety and error reduction, for example. That's a very practical thing. I also noticed that I can handle difficult, stressful situations without making them worse, which is a good thing when you work with the power grid. And that has to do with a sort of emotional resilience, stress management, right? Managing, and guess what? You see research showing mindfulness, energy, mindfulness, all of this realm can help with vitality, can help with stress reduction, pain reduction. Think about it. Out of body, less connected to the body, less connected to pain. We have an opioid crisis in the United States. It would have been better to prescribe OBEs than opioids, for a lot of these people. Right? And it sounds like a joke, but mark my words, in a few years or decades, I don't know how long it's going to take, maybe centuries, but eventually we will be prescribing OBEs and energy work to make people simply feel better, right? Don't get me wrong, I'm the first one to really be excited about the OBE for its more higher purposes, right? You could think of them that way, like self-knowledge, exploring the multidimensional nature of the of reality, afterlife. And you can, and if you are open-minded, this is a perfect tool to put in your toolkit of exploration about the nature of consciousness and everything. And I have been doing those things. But at the same time, we can help introduce everyday people who maybe are not quite ready to plunge, into the to go like Alice into the rabbit hole, right? Not quite yet. They're not ready to take that red pill, but they could take the blue pill, like in the Matrix movie, right? And just get a taste. Get a taste. And maybe they get into it for pain relief, to feel better, to manage stress, depression, anxiety, etc. Or actually, as our society gets more and more automated, there's fewer analytical and rote jobs because computers calculate better than us, and robots don't get tired of turning bolts, right? And you don't have to pay them a salary, so and health benefits and all of that, and so it's just the fact that our whole work infrastructure, our whole economy is being disrupted more and more, and that will create many challenges for us as a society. But it does mean also that if properly managed, it will liberate us quite a bit. But that remains to be seen, right? But what is a fact is that who will have the most important skills in the next generations for the labor force, right? For the economy. It'll be the people who compete with robots at what they do best? No. You cannot be faster, you cannot have more endurance than a robot, right? You cannot calculate faster than an artificial intelligent network of computers. It's not possible. But can a computer have the kind of empathy that we have, if we have it, right? No. Can it replace the human warmth? Can it be as creative and innovative as we can be? No. So actually, there will be a shift to value the things that make us human the most. The things that machines can do, machines will do better than us. But the things that make us really human, conscious beings that are more than machines, things that require understanding, empathy, real creation, real innovation, that will be valued. And that's a good thing for us. And so the OBE, the out of body experience, intuition, telepathy, mediumship, every single psychic ability that allows us to connect with something bigger than us and to each other right? Working with the energies and creating empathy, energetic connections with nature, with each other. It will actually enhance all of these abilities. They'll become even more relevant to everyday people, right? Getting your next idea could mean your next movie script. It could mean, your next company. So I know that these are very mundane kind of things, actually, compared to what we're normally thinking about. But I hope you understand where I'm coming at, which is, if we can make these things that are normally seemingly so irrelevant to everyday people, make it very relevant in a pragmatic way first, then they will discover on their own the deeper ramifications of all of this. So, that's kind of my somewhat unique approach to these things, as someone who lives in the technical engineering world and this intuitive OBE energy, world. And that's what I hope to develop. Ways to make it easier for people to have experiences, ways to make people understand the benefit of the experiences that kind of motivate them to get started. And then, of course, I'll continue to work with organizations like IAC, ICRL, which was the Princeton Paralaboratory before, to go deeper than that, right? To really understand that the out-of-body experience basically is like a near-death experience without the car crash, without the electric shock, the heart attack, right? Where you can do it over and over again, and you can actually meet beings that are more evolved, more spiritually mature. You can meet your relatives that have passed on. You can visit the place where you came from before you were born, where you planned your life mission, your purpose, your direction, your big directives. And you can really get an appreciation for the afterlife, which is also the before life, if you think about it, right? This period between lives. And you can get this feeling that you are more than the body. You are more than any label they put on you. You are a being, immortal, cosmic, eternal. But at the same time, today's relationships, the actual context we have today, the opportunities we have, they are not there forever. The opportunity to reconcile with someone is there now, might not be there next life. The opportunity to help someone that you have access to is there right now, and they need help now, not in 500 years. Crises that we're facing, like climate change, if we want to have a viable planet, we have to act within the next 10 to 30 years, not next life. So we live this duality, right? Where in one way, yes, we are eternal, there's no rush. But on the other hand, we have very pressing issues that call our attention, and we have opportunities to grow, to help, to be helped, to learn. So no one has all the answers, but I think that if you have experiences like telepathy, out-of-body experience, if you can manage your energies and read the energies of the environment, it all gives you just more information, more context, so you can make wiser choices, right? And that's all we can hope for, is to make fewer mistakes. And we always learn no matter what we do, but at least it doesn't hurt to have more hits than misses, right? Yeah, so just a brief overview of my thought process, and I'm interested to see where you'd like me to go with this.
Wow. Craig, can I get your reaction, please?
Oh, yeah, that's marvelous.
Bursting to share. Over to you, Craig.
Your mission is marvelous. The concept of helping people to have that paradigm shift that's called the overview, to have people understand that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. I mean, that's the goal. That's where we want to go. And if you have devices and ways of doing that, then we need to cultivate that and motivate people to engage in them. Now, I have two questions. One of them is I'd like to know what it is that's in the platform. And you had mentioned about changing the frequencies from your bottom of your feet up to the top of your head, accelerating that so it takes them into another state of mind. And I'm wondering whether that's what the platform is. And the second thing is, if we're going to get people to engage in these things like out-of-body experiences, we have to start them off with some low commitment activity that convinces them that they can experience something, that it's real, that it will make a difference in their perspective. And then after that, then as you say, then they'll explore these further. They'll go further into it. They'll become part of it. So the first thing is, what about the platform? And the second thing is, what low commitment activity, what can people do with this technology that you've got, with this ability that you've got, that is a low commitment, but they can just get into it, have an experience of some sort, and then really go into it afterwards?
Mm-hmm.
Two questions.
Yeah, thank you for your very pertinent questions. So as far as the platform, so there is a very old technology that's out there, which is called Vibro acoustics, right? They use something called a transducer, which is a generic word for transforming one type of signal into another. But in this case, it's a transducer that moves sound, right, audio, into mechanical vibration. So for example, you've been to some experiences where they attach these things to the chair, so you feel, you know, the bass vibrations, like when you watch a movie and you feel like boom, like when there's an explosion or something, right? Or the dinosaur, you know, hits the ground and you feel the ground shaking. So that's what it's using. So that's actually a very simple and well-known mature technology. But what we're using in a very specific way, which is mimicking a technique. There's a book out there called Vibrational State by Nancy Trivelato. She's one of the founders of IAC. And in the IAC training, this is one of the foundational things that they teach. It's a technique called the VLO, right? VLO is an insignia for voluntary energy longitudinal oscillation. Now, what does that big thing mean? It just means there is a way in which, not too unlike other like ancient techniques in yoga and other cultures, where you can flow energy, right, from, for example, in this case, from the crown chakra through every layer of the body, like an MRI, all the way to the feet, the plant chakras, soul chakras, and then back up. So you're creating, like if you were lying down like this, the energy is just going back and forth like this, right? Very slowly. There's many benefits to just doing this, just scanning your energy. You can become aware of the fact that some areas flow better than others, that there might be blockages, impedances in there, that you can also make some of the energy that's stagnant and a little frozen in place, make it more available to you, right? So there are benefits in terms of like vitality, but also we've noticed that when your energy is doing something like this, it doesn't even have to be supersonic, but you know, you're kind of self-contained. What happens to energy that's trying to interfere consciously or unconsciously with your own? It's actually more difficult for energy to affect you when you are in this sort of oscillatory state. At its greatest point, it's not just oscillatory, it's actually vibratory. It's in a resonant state of vibration. And I'm sure, if not all of you, most of you have actually felt it spontaneously. Maybe you weren't trying to create it, but how many of you at any point in your life, especially as you're falling asleep or as you're waking up, felt your entire body in a sort of buzzing state? I think a lot of you, right? So this is what we're calling the vibrational state, right? And my colleague Wagner Allegretti, also from AAC, and from IACT, he is studying the brainwave activity before, during, and after the vibrational state. And there's a TEDx talk that he did where he shows MRI pictures, and pretty phenomenal. He also used the MRI to detect energy, which is fantastic. It's quite a breakthrough. So Wagner Allegretti TEDx, if you Google that, you'll find him. And Nancy Trivelato TEDx also. Actually, come to think of it, they both have a TED talk that you'll find interesting. But so in any case, I took this concept, right, of the velo technique that can be used to produce the vibrational state, a technique that, by the way, helped me go from having out-of-body experiences once a year to really every week over the course of time, right? And knowing how effective it can be at producing not just out-of-body experiences, but the fact that it produces like a partial detachment, at least, between the physical and the extra-physical, that kind of space, it opens up your intuition, right? So you can get premonitions, intuition, telepathy a lot better. So it kind of just opens up the energy system that governs all psychic abilities. So that you start to see a unifying model to talk about all psychic abilities, really. And the energy just being like an intermediary substance or system between the physical body and whatever's beyond it, right? The astral body, mental body. So I took this technique that I found very, very effective, that I've been teaching for 20 years at IAC, and I basically just created a way.
What is this technique?
The velo technique, right?
The velo technique, okay.
Going back and forth.
Technique is going back and forth, and the platform does that.
The platform does that with mechanical sound waves
Okay.
that call your attention to the different parts of the body as the sound waves travel through your body, as you lie down on it, therefore kind of guiding your mind to apply the technique. So as you feel vibration in your head, you're thinking about your head, and then the pressure waves move, and your mind moves, your energy moves. So I'm guiding your energies by guiding your attention via traveling waves of.
And there's a bar underneath the table that vibrates. Is that what it is, and moves downward, moves upward?
Not really. So what you have is, well, in my first design with my colleague, Thomas Anderson, he's a musician and a physicist. He was working on vibrating massage beds and like vibrating a spa equipment, right? So I worked with him, and my concept was, okay, let's use your same technology, but in a different way. Let's attach one transducer at each end of the bed, right? Mm-hmm. And then let's create like a panning sound wave that gives you the like a sweeping feeling. And then you can just change the sweeping frequency and the frequency of like the actual sound wave. And we played around with that with different experts to see, you know, what felt right and what felt most like the technique until we had it just right. And so, yeah, so the sound is traveling back and forth. There's really no bar. It's actually just two speakers that instead of producing sound, they produce mechanical vibration.
Okay.
It's like the beat, the feeling of beats, if you're familiar with a little bit of music.
I'm sure you're familiar with hemisync and bilateral stimulation,
right? That's
used in EMDR. How does it relate to those? I'm sorry, I don't want to dominate the questions, but
that's fine. Well, just in the sense of like you have this idea of waves, beats moving back and forth. Instead of sound, is really mechanical vibration, and it's not so much about your brain wave activity. We're going for your chi system, making your energy move in such a way that oscillation can become resonant frequency, right? So yeah, so it's somewhat related, but not exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyways, that's just one of the technologies, right? You know, we work on an app that works with this platform that basically guides you to do energy and OB techniques.
Oh, wonderful. Okay,
but
so
here's the difference. Here's the answer to the second question, right? Which is
that's the second question, right?
Okay, so I believe that most people who will try this, they are not going for it to have an OB.
Right.
So it's a low. It's actually they're just going there to relax, to feel less pain, which is actually very easy with these techniques, right? So their expectation is low to begin with, and they will receive a higher reward than they're expecting. And without trying, without knowing, they will have these experiences spontaneous. And then it will be like a bonus surprise for them, right?
Yeah.
Now there will be other people that know exactly what it's for, and then they will get at it for that reason, right?
Yes.
But there will actually be a minority of the people.
Good.
My first question is, on your YouTube clips, you described some of your, what you call out-of-body experiences. And I want to know, how can you explain to us that it wasn't just clairvoyance, otherwise known as clairvoyance or remote viewing, or, I mean, was it clairvoyance, or was it out of body, or was it both, or does the terminology really doesn't matter?
Sure. So there's this experiment that IAC put together. And they do it periodically. It's called projective field, right? So in projective field, we're all lying down like in a ballroom or at the IAC campus, if we're not in a hotel somewhere else. And we set up a place where it's like our target location, right? So if it's in a hotel, it might be like an adjacent room. The door will be locked, and inside there'll be a computer generating, picking an image at random from a database and then projecting it like on the wall or on the screen. And outside the door, there's a third party individual, like a reporter or someone from another organization. They'll act as like a neutral third party, make sure no one interferes. And our goal is to somehow figure out what the image is. And it's true. There's all numbers of ways. There's any number of ways to find out. For example, it could be a premonition, right? Because eventually the image will be revealed. It could be telepathy, because at some point someone will know. Like right now, they did a double blind, so no one is seeing the image while it's being displayed, right? But so that is kind of a little bit addressed there. But what if there's a non-physical being that is observing the image? They could relay it to you. So in theory, that could be telepathy also, right? Or like you mentioned, it could be remote viewing. Now, there's a way to distinguish all of these from the OBE or from each other. And the point is that, yes, all of them are legitimate psychic abilities or psi abilities. And to some extent, it doesn't matter what you call it. They're just different flavors of psi ability, right? Okay. But is there actually a way to distinguish them? And why do we distinguish them to begin with, right? The reason is because these experiences are phenomenologically, subjectively different, right? Meaning the way they unfold is different. The result might be the same almost, but they feel different. So I'll give you an example. When you have remote viewing, sometimes people describe it this way. You know, I'm here relaxed. I still feel like I'm in the body. I feel like a window or an eye or like a box opened up here. And then I feel like I can see through it. And I see into another realm or another place. And I can see what it's like. And in this case, they might see the image. It could also be like a traveling clairvoyance, where remote viewing, right? Where they might feel like, you know, a part of themselves extends outward, almost like their eye is now in the room and is looking around, but they don't feel like they're there. They're still in the room. In fact, if you know about Ingo Swann, he could do both. He could have OBEs and remote viewing. When he did remote viewing, he would just even be able to draw what he's seeing, which is amazing, right? He's a good artist too. He saw like the rings of Jupiter before NASA figured that one out, right? And they described, he and a colleague described many aspects of astronomy ahead of time, ahead of the probe. So that's different. But in other cases, the person feels like they are actually there. So you feel, so an OBE might start like this. You're lying down, then you feel like your physical body becomes like very numb. And then after a while, you don't really feel it, but then you start to feel this other body. And then you might start to kind of like float upward until you're not really thinking about the physical body anymore. And now you just feel like you're in this body. And you might actually peel yourself away. You might float upwards or float away, or just think of a place and bam, you're there. And now you really feel like you're in a body, not the body, but in a body. We might call it astral body, extra physical body, whatnot, emotional body. But you actually feel like you're in this place. And for example, in that projective field experiment that I did, I was in the place, and I had like a general view of where I was, but then I could focus on a specific area, and then it became very focused. Whereas in remote viewing, usually you don't get a very good general sense, but you get a very good focused sense of whatever you're looking at. So they're subjectively actually different. They might give you the same information, but they're also different in this way. It's a lot easier to think about the OBE as a way to meet, to actually have an interaction. So for example, I've had experiences where I've met other people who are currently physical, and then we both met in this extra physical realm, and we could have a discussion, a clairvoyant discussion, but an exchange nonetheless. And then later we could share what we experienced, and there were many corroborated facts showing we didn't just imagine it. Whereas in remote viewing, we might have been looking at the same thing, but not having the same kind of interaction, right? The other thing is, much like, for example, channeling, right, mediumship, might allow for some kind of communication and interaction with people who've passed away or in between lives to communicate with us. The OBE is a complementary way of doing that, because you can actually go there and encounter them, kind of paraface to paraface, if you will, and have a discussion, have an exchange with them. For example, a famous case of that was Swedenborg, right? Swedenborg was around the 1700s. He was well known to people like Kant and Voltaire. He was really someone like a curious personality, someone who had a lot of OBEs and was famous for it. He once was with friends away from home, and he did one of his naps, and he discovered his house was on fire. He told his friends, "Oh, my house is on fire." Then later he had another nap. He said, "Oh, don't worry about it. They took care of it." And all of those facts will confirm later on. This is way before, telegrams and emails and security cameras and all that. There's no way he could have known, right? But he knew. Word of his abilities got to the Queen of Sweden, and he was already a famous scientist in the Swedish Academy of Sciences. But then he started writing about his OBEs and whatnot. He wrote the spiritual diaries, and he was summoned by the Queen to try to communicate with her brother that had passed away. Now, word is that he succeeded because he told the Queen something only the two siblings knew about. She was sufficiently impressed that she publicly vouched for him. A head of state publicly vouched for him. So these are kind of unique things, right, that you could do with the OBE. Also, you get the sense that outside the body or beyond the body, that there are these different levels of reality. So when people say, I had an OBE, what do they really mean? Because were they in the extra physical Sydney, or were they like in another realm that has nothing to do with the earth, but that is really far detached from our plane of existence, something of really another reality altogether? And the OBE allows us to experience these multiple realities. And what I come away from having these experiences is that the world is multidimensional, multi-realm, multi-level. And the reason it's that is because you find in our multiple reality world that being falls in a spectrum of evolution, spiritual development. And at any given moment, you can find beings that are extremely evolved. So evolved we cannot imagine it, because there's no reference to them on Earth, on human history even. Like there is nothing like you've ever met, and you will never meet someone on Earth like them, right? And then you have people that you just wish you never knew about because they're so horrible, right? So there's this huge spectrum. and we're somewhere in the middle. But and we're working our way, right, to become more and more spiritually mature. But this is kind of apparent just based on human history that there's different kinds of people on Earth. But when you go outside the body, you actually see that there's different communities, and these communities are like co-created extensions of the beings that inhabit them. And if there's a spectrum of evolution of consciousness, then there is also a spectrum of dimensions. And this is what I've experienced, is that there are some realms outside the body, they're almost carbon copies, but only almost, of the physical world. And there are some that are much more refined and abstract, and they're characterized by higher sentiments and ideas. So, and then there's dimensions that are more like transitional, where people are getting more removed from physical trauma and experiences and attachments, and they're moving on. There are places where they're preparing to come back, because it appears to be a sort of iterative process, alternating between physical and extra-physical, at least for some time. So you actually can see people transitioning there, people coming back, people preparing to come back. And it's different to kind of witness it and then to just kind of, I don't know, hear about it or read about it, and be able to be a witness to it, to at least some portions of it, is a whole, it changes everything. You know, it's experiencing something, reading about it, hearing about it, are two completely different things. Because one, it's almost an article of faith. And the other one is almost an article of knowledge, right? And it makes a big difference.
In terms of your device, the platform, is that something you're real close to releasing?
So I have already released like a primitive version of it, right? Like I said, demoed it, and it is available. But this more refined one, we're hoping to release it by the end of the year. So we're actually, we just rented some commercial space here in Los Angeles, in Chinatown, to assemble the demo unit, and we have all the parts, and we're building it right now. So we're hoping to have it out by the end of the year. Yeah.
Well, if you ever need anyone to come up and test it, I'm in LA, so be happy to try it out.
Excellent. Sounds like a plan. People have compared this vibroacoustic platform to, at least in how they feel, to, for example, how people feel after acupuncture or after doing one of those Epsom salt tank flotation tanks, right? But it's its own kind of unique approach, and I think we just have to try different things and use them as complementary tools. But as far as like the training, what I've noticed is a lot of people who come to IAC, right? They also go to Monroe Institute. The ones who go to Monroe Institute to IAC, because honestly, those are the only two established organizations in the U.S., at least, that have been doing this kind of work for a long time. There are other individuals out there too, William Ballman and so on, who also do training, right? I think actually Ballman is doing training at Monroe Institute. So yeah, there's just not a lot of people with a lot of experience in this field, right? So naturally, students tend to just go to both and take the approaches in a complementing way. So for example, yeah, the Monroe Institute will use a lot of the binaural beat stuff, right? And they have a beautiful facility in Virginia. IAC in the States is more, their curriculum is actually quite different, and it focuses on energy work, right? A lot about the development of the ability to sense, feel, control your energies as a way to have more of ease, right? And then it's complemented by like 16 different types of OB techniques that you learn. You learn about basically imagination techniques, breathing techniques, concentration techniques, and so on. And those are taught online as well as in person, in Los Angeles, for example. And but then they also have offices in London, in Spain, and so on. So there's this there's a small group component also. The classes are usually taught pretty often in small groups, and then they do kind of larger events once a year or so in the US, and then also in Europe, especially at the campus in Portugal. It's really a wonderful facility that I see developed there with these, they call them laboratories. So they're almost like ashrams in a sense, like they're individual rooms, individual buildings that are built for one, for the most part, where you go in and they're these spherical and semi-spherical rooms designed in such a way for the energy to flow more easily than in our boxy usual designs. And you are actually able to make a room that's just for one purpose. So any of you who've studied energy are aware of this whole concept, right, of the energy as being self-perpetuating, right, like a memory, space memory almost. So imagine if you have a small a space just for one thing. So they have this kind of sphere that's I think about like 9 meters in diameter, right? Just for OBEs, and you have this platform in the middle. It looks a lot like Cerebro from X-Men, actually. And you're lying down. Your head is in the middle of the sphere. You lose your sense of spatial confinement. And it's just a lot easier to have OBEs in that space. They call it the projectarium. I mean, that's a great example of using architecture technology as kind of OBE technology. And then of course over the years, knowing the right temperature and lighting and everything. So that is in itself using energy as a technique, as a technology. Because after 1,000 people try OBEs in the space, that space is now an OBE space, an OBE generating space. And that's a really clever thing that IC has done at the campus, where they have these specialized individual spaces. But there's other ways in which technology and consciousness are coming together. Even simple ways. I did this simple experiment that you can do at home. You can get 3 jars of flowers, like white carnations, and set them in jars with the same amount of water, same amount of everything, plant food if you put any. Make sure they get equal amount of sunlight every day, even if you have to rotate the positions. But identify just one as your experimental jar. And I think you can see where this is going. Every day you donate energy to that one plant for 5 minutes, 3 times a day, or one time 15 minutes. Try and make it like about 15 minutes worth of donating energies. The thing about energies, as you know, is you can do it remotely. So you don't have to be right next to the plant where maybe your body heat might confound the experiment. Stand several feet away and just focus your energy in being kind and loving to this plant and wishing for it to stay vibrant and alive. You don't have to wish anything negative to the others, just kind of leave them alone. And I did that, and I actually had an intern in University of Colorado do the same thing, and we collected the data, and we took photographs, right? And what we saw is that it's really like night and day. It's very obvious when you look at the flowers that were white carnations and now are becoming like yellowed and brownish. And I can actually do a simple analysis of the color and find out how light they've managed to stay or how darkened they've become, and almost use that as a measurement of the effect, right? And then you can do some statistics and find out how likely that is to happen at random versus not, and so on. So I published a paper and did a presentation about that last year, and now I'm refining it. But again, I'm just using photography and plants, actually biological things as energy technology, and a camera, a simple smartphone, as a sort of analysis technique. So again, this is where my interests keep going. How can we take simple technologies, if possible simple ones, to make all of this accessible, palpable, measurable, right? And that's what led me to intern at the Pear Laboratory when I was in university. You've all heard of Pear Laboratory, right? The Princeton Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Lab, Brenda Dunn, Bob John, right? So they had these random number generators and random mechanical cascades, machines that behave randomly. But when exposed to the human will and energy and intention and rapport, they were able to make these machines less random, more biased in a sense. And they were able to do what, for example, the equivalent of flipping a coin 100 times. And instead of getting roughly 50 heads and tails, you'd get like 60 heads instead, because you wanted more heads to come out. But they did that with electronic equipment and so on. Equipment that was calibrated, known to be random, and then they showed that people could make the desired outcome happen more often than not in a statistically significant way. Basically, they laid out the research to show that we have the ability to influence the physical world, even if it's just slightly. But notice that if you slightly change something, that slight change can accumulate, right? It can really become a cumulative effect. And a lot of interesting things can happen. So for example, you've heard of the Global Consciousness Project, where they were able to actually see their data predict a major event right before it happened. The event was 9/11, right? So they saw that their global network of random number generators became a lot less random, starting 4 hours before the first plane hit the first tower. So you can read all about that if you haven't heard of it. But again, just another example of how machines, are not the way to know about consciousness, because you cannot know more about consciousness than having your own experiences, right? That's the way to do it. But they are like a bridge to show, hey, this is not just imagination, right? The fact that you can have an out-of-body experience and meet someone and share information and check and then corroborate it later. The fact that you can see actual events and then corroborate what you've seen after the fact. All those things make you feel like, okay, I'm not crazy. I'm not imagining things. I don't just have a fertile imagination. I'm actually acquiring information in a veridical way. And one thing is for you to convince yourself. That's fairly easy to get sufficient evidence that you are having a real experience. Transmitting that to someone else is very difficult. They have to have their own experiences. But if they're closed-minded and not interested or distracted, how will they even have their first experience? So part of what I'm doing is trying to make it easier for people to have any kind of first experience with any of this phenomena. So then they get curious to have more and more.
Nelson, you've got so much to share with us. But I am aware of the fact that you've already been teaching a 2-hour class today and you need to go and have some family time. So thank you so much for coming on and joining us. We really, really appreciate it.